This is Algebra Lesson 9.2, Functions and Graphs. A function is a relationship in which each input has one output. So when we were doing the coding exercise from lesson 9.1, when we coded the letter X, it turned into the letter P. When we coded the letter T, it turned into the letter U. There was always one possible output when we put that letter into the code. The last question on the exercises wasn't a functional code. When you tried to code the letter S, nothing worked. When you tried to decode the letter M, there were two possible answers. So we can test a function using the vertical line test. If you have a graph of a function and a vertical line goes through that graph only one time, that passes the test, it's a function. If you have a graph and a vertical line goes through and hits the graph more than one time, at that input, there's more than one output, that fails the test, it's not a function. The independent variable always goes along the horizontal or the x-axis. It's the input variable. The dependent variable always goes along the y or the vertical axis. That's the output variable. We call the values of the graph along the x-axis the domain. And we call the numbers along the y-axis the range. We say that the dependent variable depends on the independent variable. So we can tell which one goes on which axis. So let's do some examples. I have a bunch of graphs here, and we want to know which ones are functions. So I'm going to do the vertical line test. If I can draw any vertical line that hits the graph more than one time, it fails the test. Every one of those lines I drew hit the graph once, that passes the test. So yes, that's a function. My next graph, if I draw a vertical line here, that passes, and that passes, and that passes, but as soon as I find any line that hits the graph more than one time, that fails the test for a function. That is not a function. My next one is a function. No line will hit the graph more than once. My next one is not a function. That passes, but as soon as I get over here, those all fail the test. Any single line that hits the graph more than once causes the test to fail. My last one's kind of a trick. Yes, that is a function. If I draw a vertical line right here, since I have a closed circle and an open circle, it's hitting the graph right here, but it's not hitting the graph right here. So that passes the test. That's a function. Letter B shows me a graph. It charts the depth of a swimming pool that's leaking. I have, at the beginning of my story problem, 2 feet of water in the pool. Over a couple hours, that pool is leaking. And then, at around 6 hours into the problem, they fill it back up. And maybe it was raining for about 4 hours, but as soon as it stopped raining, it started leaking again. So I'm not going to write that all out, but something along the lines. Pool was leaking for 6 hours, started raining for 4 hours, so it filled up, and then it started leaking again. Little b says, what are the independent and dependent variables? Remember, the independent variable goes along the horizontal axis. So time is my independent variable. The dependent variable goes along the vertical axis. So depth would be my dependent variable. What are the domain and range? Domain are the values along the independent axis. So in this case, what hours are being graphed? I'm graphing hours 0 to 16. And my graph is continuous on that interval from 0 to 16. So the range is not 0 to 4. The axis does go from 0 to 4, but I want to know the values that the graph covers. The lowest that my graph goes is to 1, and the highest that the graph goes is to 3. So my range is actually 1 to 3. That is it for the notes. Good luck with the exercises, and let me know if you have any questions.